here with another update on my We Should Watch project. Haven't had too much time to add a lot to this, but I want to show one new feature that I've included here. So just as a reminder, this whole application is intended to allow a user to create groups and invite people to those groups, and anyone who is in that group can add media, movies, and TV shows, so you can all keep track of the things that you want to watch together. What we've got here is I'm already signed in as me. I'm going to make a new group. We're going to call this Show Invite Logic, and that's going to be the new group. I showed this create group functionality in the last update. What we're going to do is we're going to click on this invite to group button, which we can see here. It's just a modal, and it's just showing that modal when we click that button. And then we've got this invite form here, which is what we're actually showing when we open that modal. The first thing I want to call attention to is I've got this use fetch groups custom hook now. I was previously using the same logic in another component. When we add media, there's a modal that pops up so you can select what group you want to add that media to. And I reviewed the actual backend and how we're getting that information. Here's the custom hook. It's the same functionality that we saw in the last update video, but now it's in a custom hook. We're accepting an email, which should be a string, and this refresh boolean, which we have a default value as false, mainly because I'm not requiring we pass this in. In this particular use case, we're not using this refresh boolean, but when we add media, we have kind of like an on-click check, so that when we do add something, we tell this custom hook that we have made an update and we want to call it again and refresh that group information. So here you can see if we have an email or if refresh changes, we're going to use effect to call fetch groups, and fetch groups just goes to the back end with the user information, gets that group data and sets it. And then we return a loading state, an error state, and our groups that we have returned from the back end. So in our invite form, we're pulling that information in from the custom hook. We send in the email. Here you can see if we have a session or if we don't have a session, then we just kind of advise, please sign in to invite. We'll handle these things different later in the future. If we have a loading state, show loading. If we have a message, show a message. If we have an error, show an error. Otherwise, we return this form. We'll look at how we submit this information in a second. We've got our label here for our email. We've got the input, which is just going to track whatever our value is in email, and we just update as we type. And then we've got the group section here, which is a select. And we've got the drop down with the different values here. We see our new group that we've created, show invite logic. So we've got that from our custom hook. You can see I've just got options here. Our options I've got up here, and we're just mapping through the group data that we received from our custom hook, and then just making an option for each of those values that we have received back. So we're going to select show invite logic, and I'm going to invite another email address that I have that I'm going to blur out here so you guys can have my professional email but not my personal, something@gmail.com. I'm going to click on the send button, right? And we can see on submit, we use this handle submit function, which e.prevent default, so we don't have that refresh. We're not going anywhere, but we do send this information to the back end. We send that user email that we just typed in, as well as whatever ID we just selected from that dropdown. We're managing that with state as well. So let's click send and see what happens. I don't have good styling here yet. Everything's kind of gross looking, but we can see we've got invite sent successfully. So what this is doing is we got a group here in the back end, and we look at invite user. So the backend API, we're doing a lot of stuff here. So we expect a group ID and the invited user email, which we just saw where it's coming from. And then we have a node mailer here. So node mailer, we're just creating how we're going to send this email out. I'm using SendGrid to help send my emails. I talked about that in a previous update as well. It's also how I'm using OAuth to send email links if you're not going to sign in with Google, if you're going to sign in with an email address. We make an invite token by using crypto, and then we create an invite link. So right now this is localhost, but it's just going to be localhost invite token, whatever our token is that we generated. And then here we're making this email. So here's the message. From is going to be what's in my env file. To is the invited user email we just sent back. Subject, invitation to join a group on We Should Watch. And then there's a message here with a link to that invite link that we created. This is the kind of try catch here to actually make an invite on the back end and send it out. So here we've got an expiration date, which I'll talk about this in a second, which this is just makes this 24 hours. I'll probably change that in the future, but more to come on that. And then we do with Prisma, we make an invitation with the stuff that we just made, a group ID that we selected, invite our user email, the token we just made, and an expires date. And then we send that email with the node mailer transporter that we've created. And then if it's successful, we do invite sent successfully, and that's the message we send back, which we can send here. Otherwise, we're going to have some kind of error and send that back instead. So let's look at the invitations in MongoDB. So if we look in Mongo now, we can see here's the stuff we're creating. We've got that group ID, which this is the group ID that we're inviting the person to. Here's the object ID, just the ID of record, the invited user email, the token that we created for that specific invite, and then here's an expires date. I want to make these entries in this collection expire automatically and auto delete, which MongoDB has a way to handle, which I believe is called time to live. I wasn't sure how to set up the indexing process to delete that stuff automatically in MongoDB Atlas. I saw a couple instructions that weren't quite working for me. Hopefully I can figure that out in the future, but if we have any Mongo experts out there who know how to do that with Atlas, please let me know. Here is my email that we received from weshouldwatchmailer@gmail.com. Hello, you've been invited to join a group on We Should Watch, an app to create groups and keep track of media. So this is the email that we've created from that backend call. And then there's a click here to join link, and it says it expire in 24 hours, which technically right now is not true, but we might make that a few days, we might make that a week, whatever, once I can actually figure out how to make these things expire. So before we actually go to that link, I'm going to sign out of this account because I need to be in the other account to actually make this thing work. Now, through the magic of editing, we're signed in on my next account, my other account here. So we're back on this email. Let's click the link that we received, and you can see it's taking me to the localhost invite token address that we saw on the back end. And we saw some flashing up here. If you're not signed in as the appropriate user, it's going to let you know. And again, there's no styling. This is very, very basic, was just to get the functionality of this thing. But we can see that we have been invited to join the group, show invite logic. And then we've got this accept invite button here. So let's look at this a little bit more. In my pages, we've got an invite route here, which is just index.tsx. And all we're really doing here is we've got our router from Next.js. We pull in the token from the address that we have, and we've got some error stuff and some message stuff, which we've seen in the other components and things that I've been making here. Use effect, if router isn't ready, we return use effect refreshes on router is ready. If you're using router in Next.js and trying to do things with use effect, make sure you're using this. Otherwise, you might get some weird results and things don't work quite as expected. So here we have a fetch invitation function, which all this does, we'll go look at the back end here. Once this thing loads correctly and we have routers ready, we take the token and we go back and we find that invitation with the fetch invitation logic here, which literally just takes the token that we're receiving here on the back end, finds it with Prisma. If we don't have it, we return an error. If we do have it, we find the group information as well, and we send back the invite information we just previously received, as well as the group name that is associated with. Cool. So now we're back on the invite index page, and we've got this accept invite button here with the accept invite function tied to it on the click. And all this is going to do is this is going to take that information we have received. We're going to send our current user email and the invite token to the backend to accept this. If we, hopefully we can get a message back to set some data to say that we were successful here. Let's give that a try. We're going to click the button. Successfully joined group. Now again, I'm not doing anything else yet, right? This is just basic functionality, but there it is. Accept invite here. All this is doing is we take that email and invite token that we just received from clicking that button. We find the invitation. If the invitation is not found, or if the email that we have received doesn't match what's on the invitation, then we're going to send back an error message. Otherwise, we're going to update the current user that we have and push on the group information from that invite, and we're also going to update the group on the other side. And then we're going to go back and delete that invitation so it no longer exists in our database. And then we'll send that successfully joined group message, which we're seeing here. So now if we go back to our homepage, you can see I'm still signed in here as my other email that I'm going to blur out from you guys. If we go to, let's look at the new Power Rangers. Now we're taken to this movies page, which I still have to clean up. We see our other data here, our add to group button. And you can see now I am on the show invite logic, or part of that group, as my other email account that we invited. So super fun to have set that up. I'm really happy with the functionality and the way it works. So hopefully this was a fun one to watch. If you have any questions about anything that I went over here, let me know and I'll dive deeper into some of that information for you. Thank you for tuning in.